She asked me to dance as a joke. I know it was a joke because she was laughing when she said it, and because the song playing was not a dancing song by any reasonable definition. It was something loud and ironic that the DJ had clearly chosen to fill a gap, the musical equivalent of a shrug. And because she said it the way she said most things, with that particular sideways delivery she used when she wanted to be playful without being accountable for the playfulness, the one that meant you could take it either way and she'd be fine with either. I took it the way that wasn't a joke. I said yes, and held out my hand, and something moved across her face that I catalogued, and then immediately stopped thinking about, because we were moving toward the small cleared space near the bar and I had to focus on not making an idiot of myself, which was the more pressing concern. Her name is Sophie. She had been my coworker for 8 months, my friend for 6 of those 8, the person I had been carefully not thinking about in any particular way for approximately 5, because she was my coworker and I was not 17, and I had learned enough about myself by then to know that I was not good at the careful management of feelings I had decided not to have, and the smarter move was to not have them in the first place. That plan had been going adequately until the company holiday party, the ironic DJ, and the joke I took the wrong way, or possibly the right way. This is the thing I did not yet know. The party was the kind of event companies throw when they have decided that mandatory fun is better than no fun, held in a rented space downtown with open bar and a buffet that nobody touches until everyone has had enough to touch it. And approximately 60 people arranged in the specific pattern of office parties everywhere. The people who actually like each other clustered in corners. The people who are performing liking each other clustered near the food, and the senior leadership forming a separate weather system in the back that everyone is aware of and nobody approaches. Sophie was at the party for the same reason I was, which was that not coming would have been noticed. She had texted me before we arrived, saying I give it 90 minutes before I fake a headache, and I had replied I'll time it. And she had sent back a single character that communicated affection and mild contempt simultaneously, which was a register she had mastered completely. We had arrived separately and found each other within 4 minutes, which was either natural or telling, and was probably both. She was wearing something that was not her work clothes, which sounds obvious and is significant. Because there is a version of someone you know in a professional context, and then there is the version that exists outside that context, and sometimes they are the same, and sometimes they are startlingly different, and sometimes the difference is not large, but lands on you with disproportionate weight, and you stand there with your drink holding yourself very steady and trying not to show that anything has landed. I held myself very steady. We talked to other people, separately and together, the way you do when you are friends with a coworker at a work event. Adjacent, orbiting, drifting apart and back without making anything of it. She made me laugh twice across the room with a look alone, which is a specific skill she had developed and deployed without mercy. I watched her talk to the senior leadership weather system with the particular diplomatic ease she brought to everything, which was one of the things I had spent 5 months trying not to find remarkable. And then the DJ played the ironic gap filler, and she appeared beside me and said, laughing, "Will you dance with me?" And I said yes, and held out my hand. The first song was the joke. We were both aware of this, performing a mild irony, holding each other at a reasonable distance, and moving in a way that acknowledged the absurdity of the song, while also technically constituting dancing. She was laughing. I was, I think, also laughing. We were 2 friends being ridiculous at a work party, which was entirely defensible and completely fine. Then the song ended. The DJ, apparently having decided that the ironic gap filler had worked better than expected, transitioned into something slower. Not slow, not a ballad, but slower, with an actual melody, the kind of song that asks different things of 2 people in proximity than the previous one had. We were still standing there. Neither of us had moved away. She looked at me. I looked at her. Something passed between us that was not a joke, and we both felt it, and neither of us named it. We stayed. The distance between us changed, which is the only way I can describe it accurately, not dramatically, not suddenly, but in the way that distances change when two people stop holding them in place. I became aware of my hand at her back, and her hand in mine, in a way I had not been 30 seconds earlier. She had stopped laughing. I had stopped performing anything. We were just two people moving slowly in a rented space, while the DJ made a better decision than he knew, and the party continued at a volume around us that I could no longer quite hear. She said something. Not loud enough. The music was too close. I shook my head and leaned in slightly, and she said it again. Close enough now that I could feel the words before I fully heard them. "This is different from how I thought this would go," she said. "Different how?" "Different." She looked at me. And the look was direct in the way her looks were always direct, but with something added, something that had not been in the look she used across rooms or over coffee. Better different. I said nothing. I was too busy trying to breathe normally, which had stopped being automatic. By the second song, nobody was laughing. We danced through that song, and then something unspoken kept us there for the one after, which I will never be able to tell you the name of, because I was not processing anything as music by that point. The party was still happening around us, and people we worked with were presumably observing this and forming opinions, and I was not in any condition to care about either of those things. Sophie was not, it turned out, someone who said things she didn't mean. This was something I had known about her professionally for 8 months, and was only now recalibrating to apply to the current situation. The offhand comment at the department meeting, the casual aside in the elevator, the text at 9 in the morning that was only technically about work. All of it was meant. She meant things. She had meant better different. I walked through what that meant while we danced, carefully, in the 30-second stretches I could manage before my focus dissolved. 8 months of knowing her. 6 months of friendship that had developed the specific texture of friendship that has a charge underneath it, where being around her had a quality of aliveness to it. A particular clarity, where the day was different after running into her unexpectedly than it had been before. 5 months of deliberately not examining any of that. I had done a creditable job of the not examining. I had merely convinced myself it was a managed condition, something I had under control, something I could continue to have under control indefinitely. It is very hard to maintain a managed condition while dancing slowly with someone who has just told you this is better than expected. The party wound down the way parties do, not all at once, but in waves, people trickling out in 2s and 3s, until the density thinned enough to make staying feel effortful. Sophie and I had drifted back toward conversation and other people after the dancing, which I think we both needed. A small restoration of ordinary context, a chance to look at each other from a regular distance and figure out what we were doing. She found me near the Coats at the end of the night. The 90 minutes became considerably more than 90 minutes, she said. I noticed that too. She was looking at me with the direct look again, the one with the addition. "I'm glad I asked you to dance." "It was a joke," I said. "It was initially a joke." She tilted her head slightly. "You knew that. I knew that. And you said yes anyway. I said yes anyway." She smiled, not the sideways playful one, a different one, smaller and more specific. "Why did you say yes anyway?" I thought about the 5 months of careful management, about the drawer I had kept things in, about the decision I had made somewhere around month 3 not to be the person who complicated something good by wanting it to be something more, and how that decision had seemed very reasonable at the time and was sitting significantly less well at this particular moment. "You know why," I said. She held my gaze. "I want you to say it." "Sophie, I've been wanting you to say it for a while," she said, quietly and without flinching. I was running out of patience for waiting. Hence the joke. Hence the joke. Something in her expression shifted, softened slightly. "I wasn't sure you'd take it the way I hoped." "What way did you hope?" "The way you did. We left the party together and walked, because the night was cold and clear, and neither of us was ready for it to end, which we established by starting to walk without discussing direction. She talked about a project she was worried about, and I talked about something that had been sitting on me at work, and we were two friends walking in the cold. Except we were not only that anymore, and both of us knew it, and neither of us was pretending otherwise. At the corner where our routes home diverged, she stopped and turned toward me and said, "I don't usually do that." "Ask people to dance?" "Ask people anything," she said. "That way. Where I'm actually asking." I understood what she meant. She was precise with her words, and she was telling me that what had seemed like a joke had been a real question underneath it. A question with cover over it, in case I took it as only a joke, but a real question all the same. "I'm glad you asked," I said. "And I'm glad I answered the real version." She looked at me for a moment, and the city was quiet around us in the particular way it goes quiet late at night, and she stepped forward and hugged me, the kind that holds, the kind that says something without being a word. "Dinner," she said, into my shoulder. "Not a work thing, just dinner." "Yes," I said. "Soon, soon," I said. She pulled back and looked at me one more time with the direct look, the one with the addition, and then she walked home in the cold, and I watched her go and stood on the corner for an extra moment in the night air. We had dinner that Saturday. It was not a work thing. Nothing about it was a work thing. Not the restaurant she chose, which was too good and too quiet to be anything professional. Not the way we sat. Not the way the evening stretched past any reasonable ending time, and we kept finding reasons to stay another few minutes. Not the way she laughed at something I said with her whole face, in a way that was not the professional version of her laugh at all. It was the most honest I had been in a single evening in several years. We talked about the 5 months, mine and apparently hers, the parallel careful management we had each been conducting without knowing the other was conducting one too. She told me she had almost said something at least twice before the party and had pulled back both times, which I found both relieving and slightly maddening. I told her I had kept things in a drawer for long enough that the drawer was getting unreasonably heavy. She laughed at the drawer. I let her. At the end of the evening, she looked at me across the table and said, "You know what's strange? I feel like this is the most like myself I've been around you. Which doesn't make sense because I've been comfortable around you for months." "It makes sense," I said. "Before tonight, we were being comfortable carefully. This is comfortable without the careful." She considered this. "Yes, that's exactly it. Comfortable without the careful. That is what it is. When it is right. When you stop holding the distance in place, and the distance becomes whatever it actually is, which is always less than the managed version. And the relief of that is larger than you had prepared for." She asked me to dance as a joke. She was laughing when she said it, and the song was absurd, and there was plausible deniability on all sides, and I took it the way I took it. And by the second song nobody was laughing, and the thing in the drawer had been in there long enough, and sometimes the door you have been standing in front of for 5 months opens because someone made a joke at a holiday party, and you decided to say yes. You say yes. That is the whole of it. When someone extends their hand in your direction, even sideways, even laughing, even covered in plausible deniability, you look at them and you say yes, and you find out what the real question was. The real question is always better than the joke version. Have you ever said something as a joke because you weren't ready to say it as a real thing and found that the person on the other end took it exactly as seriously as you secretly needed them to? And have you ever stood on a corner at the end of a night knowing that something had just become permanently different and felt the cold air on your face and thought, yes, this, exactly this? Tell me in the comments. Subscribe if you've ever had a joke turn into the truest thing that happened to you all year.